and made it a completely even playing field, that's one thing. But what they're doing is they're taking a web of incredibly restrictive laws. I think the manual is 316 pages that I have to abide by. They're changing one thing in it. And by changing one thing to give someone else a niche in the market, such as a convenience store and a profit center, it's not a fair playing field. They left all the restrictions on me. There's a lot of things that I can't do and that I have to do by law. There's a lot of things I can and can't, I shouldn't say can't sell, that I can't sell that they can. There's a competitive disadvantage if you take this web and only change one thing. Because I still have to fit into the web, but this new entity has this wonderful free reign. And that's a non-competitive market. They basically have taken my profit away, left me with a huge amount of restrictions, and I get to go off on a whole different license, new different tangent without those restrictions. If it was a real world and we sat down and said, let's readdress all the liquor laws in the state of Colorado,
but
that's
not,
one thing.
Yeah,
But
all right,
that one change is not a good change.
Let's play this out. Let's do the theoretical. And for those who don't know, maybe you could explain this. We have this bizarre, I think ridiculous, nearly 100-year-old system of 3 different tiers. You've got guys like Dennis here who are allowed one single little liquor license. Imagine having a license to be a dry cleaner and you only have one. You can't have the economies of scale. You can't take the expertise. How long have you been in the business?
38 years.
38 years. You've probably learned a lot about how to run a store. You probably learned a lot about how to manage people. You probably learned a lot about negotiating with the liquor, guys like this, and getting your booze. Wouldn't it be great if you had the ability to open up a second store, and a third store, and a fourth store, and start using that knowledge? We, heavy drinkers, we are lacking because
You're revolting.
Yes, we do. Well, I'm revolting in a lot of ways. We are missing a lot because we can't multiply what you have, and we have this 3-tier system. Maybe you can give me a quick explanation. So we've got guys that make the booze like you,
right,
or Coors, and they can't sell it directly to him. You have to go to a middleman, a wholesaler, and then the wholesaler sells it to you.
Incorrect.
Tell me about it.
I can buy directly from him.
Okay.
In general, that is the overall theory. In about half the states, it works like that. In the other half of the states, it works in all kinds of different ways. But there's a 3-tier system in pretty much every state, except for like a strange example of Oklahoma has actually a 4th tier also. And then you've got sub-tiers of the wholesaling tier in big cities like New York City and stuff like that. But basically, it's manufacturers, and then wholesalers, and then retailers. In Colorado, another quirk in our law that has allowed craft brewing to flourish is that brewers, manufacturing tier, can also act as a wholesaler and sell directly to retail. So
that's you.
That's me. So when we started back in 1994,
because you're a tiny shop, Coors could not do this.
Though they actually own their wholesale. They own the wholesale operation. So yes, in Colorado there's.
But they have to own 2 separate entities. They have to make it, then they have to have a wholesaler, and then they can finally give it to you.
But that's economic driven. That's smart on their part.
But they don't need. It doesn't need to be separately owned.
Okay.
We had a separate DBA within our corporate structure, and we held the wholesale license also.
Hey, by the way, I haven't asked you. Do you want the Imperial Stout or Jackman's American Pale Ale?
Yes.
I'm going to go for Jackman's. The stout sounds like it might put me to sleep.
No, don't worry. This show puts you to sleep. That's fine. All right.
So you've got this 3-tier system that in Colorado has had a couple of things as the craft brewers have come up, and the fact that Coors is here, I'm sure, has something to do with the fact that a brewery can own the wholesaler also, and the fact that AB is here, AB InBev is not going to hurt keeping that situation. Anheuser-Busch.
Okay.
Anheuser-Busch InBev up in Fort Collins. They've got one of their largest breweries and is here in Colorado. So that's allowed the access to market that the craft brewers are concerned about. We like access to market. When we started in '94, I was the guy.
Access to a protected market.
Well, it's you say protected. You also said that it's highly protected. It's also highly regulated. Mm-hmm. So, I was a poli-sci guy at the Air Force Academy, I can argue the philosophical side of let's free up the market, but pragmatically, can we just change our way incrementally to going from a regulated business of selling alcoholic beverages to just selling beer in the nursery school and the flower shop and the medical marijuana dispensary and everywhere else, that has a sales tax license would be allowed to sell beer is basically what you're arguing.
I'm not even talking about that. Let's take one issue at a time. One of the issues at the legislature is to allow this beer, which is not 3-2 beer, to be sold not in grocery stores, but at a convenience store. And the convenience store is saying, well, now that you have the ability to sell on Sunday, we're not selling as much beer. And
which is hilarious.
Well, let me put it this way. It's an odd thing that we still sell 3-2 beer. I'm glad we sell 3-2 beer. I liked the old 3-2 system, which was training wheels for kids. That when you're 18, you can have 3-2 beer, and then when you're older, you can have a real Coors Light, or Killian's, or Blue Moon, which I like, or this.
We're probably roughly the same age.
Oh, you're a lot older than me.
I grew up drinking 3-2 beer here in Colorado when I was 18. The law changed after.
I think it was perfect for that, because I remember going out with buddies, having a couple of beers. You got to drink a lot of 3-2 to really get in trouble, but
and you really can't. You also really can't poison yourself.
No.
And that if you're going to drink underage, why drink a Coors Light when you can drink a vodka and truly poison yourself? And so I think we're learning slowly this was a bad move, and it was of course blackmail from the feds.
Sure.
And it has to do with dollars, which is also what the 3-tier system is about. It's a rational structure from a collecting taxes standpoint, because in most cases it's the wholesaler tier, not all states but most states, the wholesale tier collects the excise tax. They're responsible for reporting how much beer has left their dock, and then the tax gets connected at that point. And we pay, for example, in Colorado, we pay excise tax once a month. Some states it's once a quarter, and maybe more frequently.
Okay. Getting back to the simple convenience store, you're worried that if a convenience store is allowed to have full booze, they're not going to put this on the shelf. They might put Coors on the shelf, but they're not going to put this on the shelf because this is a very odd little brand.
We're worried in a couple ways, and that fundamentally is it. The one thing that worries us is that, yes, getting into the chain, getting a chain authorization means that a small brewery has to fly to Des Moines or Cincinnati or Bentonville or Pleasanton or somewhere like that to get in front of a chain buyer to get authorized on the shelf. And that's really not going to happen for most little breweries.
Yeah, let me go to that and go, welcome to the real world.
Yeah, but the bigger part of that is that now you've got convenience stores skimming off a portion of the biggest segment of a liquor store sales, which is beer, which means that those stores that we can get access to are going to start to disappear. And we're talking the tip of the iceberg here.
Why are they going to disappear if 7-Eleven is allowed to sell full-strength Coors instead of half-strength Coors? Come on, this is not a big deal.
Please let me answer that one. If you look at out of the 1,600 liquor stores, about 1,200 of them earn themselves a living. Those people, like I said, they bought into a store in a position, pay a lot of rent, paid a lot for the store. So it's not like we're dealing about incremental profit loss. We're talking about they pay themselves a salary, and at the end of the year, if their little company made some money, that's amazing, because it doesn't happen very often.
Right.
So now if you take 70% of their business that they got because it was a convenience, it was the draw, it was the gasoline of 7-Eleven, it was the draw that brought people in that store, you take half of it away, there's not enough profit to either be profitable or pay themselves a salary, and sometimes pay the rent, most times pay the rent. So they simply dry up. They're gone. So fortunately...
So you're talking about the mom and pop liquor store is going to be hurt because 7-Eleven has the freedom. Remember, we live in America.
Yes, we do.
We live in America where you should be free to sell legal products. And what I hear is somebody who has a system that you think will give you an advantage because it is a highly regulated system. It gives you an advantage because you're not going to be competing with King Soopers or 7-Eleven should they be able to do it. And you can come up with these great reasons, but I'm the end customer. You know,
And right now, the end customer in Colorado has a better selection and lower price for beer than any state in the country.
I hear the same thing when it comes to, for
really
instance, the taxi cartel. The taxi cartel in Denver says, you know, you can't just enter the market. You have to go to government and ask, Mother, may I please start a taxi cab company? But that guarantees you're going to get better service.